Welcome to my restoration series. This house was built in 1793. I purchased it in March of 2023 and I'm fixing it up. If you haven't already, go back and watch the previous 4 episodes and get caught up. Thank you.
Hang around till the very end to see an update on the horse barn.
Welcome back to episode 5 of the Graveyard House. You can see I made some progress since our last episode. We got the sill place in place. That's an 8 by 8 inch sill plate. It's 32 by 17 feet. This extension part of the house, which was the most dilapidated, which is where I started. If you go back early in the couple episodes, you notice I started there with the foundation and then it just worked its way across. This whole foundation was just, there was no foundation. And I'm bringing it back to the original way it was built with the stone stack on the ground. Some people are confused why I'm not pouring a concrete. But speaking to Ken and Kurt and a few guys, they've done this to all these old houses up here. I'm restoring it back to the way it was with a lot of improvement. So it's going to be totally fine. The ground's going to heave and flow. It's going to be fine. This is all gravel down about 3 feet deep around all of this. The water is not going to stay contained. It's all going to get drained away. In this episode, you'll see how the drainage system was all developed. It's just improving on the way it was.
This morning began, this is mostly all done in one particular day. The dig out, the gravel backfill, and the drainage. This is a small mini excavator that Hunter and Kurt use. This thing has been so versatile. If anything I think about buying, this should be the one thing I think about buying. And you'll see we had to be really precarious. We didn't want to knock down the roof, so we had to figure out the delicate dance of getting from one side to the other. The I-beam was still in place, so we devised this plan to come through this side from the outside. The I-beam is kind of right where the camera is, so you'll see. And this whole side of the fireplace for some reason was about 20 inches higher than the back side of the fireplace. So the first order of business was to level it. So you see how much dirt we scoop just out of that side of the fireplace. And then as we work our way through the building and we're able to access the other side, we start digging up the foundation over there. And going back and forth with what's holding the house up, you'll notice we also developed a delicate dance of putting poles in and then the H-frames, which is what I'm calling them, the H-frames. And you see how much material we had to pull out of this. So now we're fully at the other side where the gravel bed is going to go. I'm going to call it the gravel bed that goes underneath the stone stack. And we had tons and tons and tons of dirt, literally tons of dirt to move. And we moved it across the street to the other side of the property on the opposite side of the road. Several truckloads. So as we were removing all that material, Hunter is a whiz on that mini backhoe. He's really, really good at it. And you see we're beginning to cut into, you could see the I-beam just on the left side of the garbage can. So which is the main reason we couldn't come from that side. You could see it there. And then also the septic tank is there as well. We could not get into the septic tank. So now we're full blast digging out this side of the gravel bedding. And this is some progress on the stairs. By the end of the video, you'll see some more progress on the stairs. But I wanted to also show you in the basement. This was a month ago. By the end of the video, you'll see it as it stands today. So Ken did a wonderful job. We're going to put the capstones on that throughout this video. One important thing I did while we had the ground open is we changed the main line to the house. And that's, you could see, is the main drainage line that goes out to the septic, which is right there, which is another reason we can't get the mini excavator on this side of the building, because we're going to be right on top of the septic tank. And this is just to remind you what never to do when you're holding a circular saw. We needed a wedge. So going back and forth, it was a delicate dance to get the H-frames in and out of place. The reason we made the H-frames is so that we thought we could dig between them. And in some cases we could, in other cases we could not. So here I ended up just using a leg that goes directly up underneath the foundation. It's going to get buried in the gravel, but we'll be able to pull it out later. So as we dug the trench, we were putting in those legs, and here then we're taking out the H-frames. We're going to save them. We're going to put them back in again. You'll see by the end of the video how everything gets used. And Hunter starts digging right away That was the original idea, is that we could dig between them just like he's able to get in there just like that. But we needed to make our trench much wider. Ken was the supervisor on this job. Ken is the stone stack gentleman. And this is something Ken's done several times. And he kept telling us we needed to go wider and deeper and wider and deeper. And you could see how we are just barely able to use that H-frame right where it stands now. But we will replace that with a leg in just a few minutes. But Hunter's able to dig in there and get what we need out. And you could see how we leveled that one side of the fireplace. But it's patience. We knew we had the whole day to do this, and it's a lot of patience. And I looked for any kind of artifact, any extra axe heads, anything cool. Didn't find one cool thing. Some broken pottery was really about it. And you could see digging and digging and digging, and then we got to make our turn. There we are, banging in that leg. We're able to take out the H-frame just after we put the leg in. And something I realized as we keep putting these in and out and in and out, the roof is getting raised up. The roof is about 4 inches higher at the very open end than it should be, but we will bring it back down to its proper level once I put the walls back in. And there's Ken giving us some supervision on what we should do and how deep we should go. And we just keep digging and digging and digging. And now we're coming from the other side. Finally able to make the turn. Now Kurt showed up with 2 truckloads of this gravel. This is obviously just the first load. The trough we dug took a considerable amount of gravel. I still have some left over after 2 full giant truckloads. I'm not sure what this is. Maybe this is number 4. This gravel plays an important role. It creates the bedding for the stone stack, which you'll see ultimately by the end of the video. But it also creates a ton of drainage. It creates drainage, basically. So when the rain falls off the house, it falls into this gravel. And then these tubes that Hunter's showing up with are going to carry the water away. And that's what we're just discussing right now, which direction. I said, should we go down that way? We have, Kurt and Hunter have a pole that sends a signal to a receiver. And you could kind of see it in the background maybe. And it sends a beep, and you know how deep or how high the ground is in that one particular spot. So we needed to drop down, the water needed to drop down about 2 feet. So from this high spot here, that you see in the gravel starting to go into the trough, and we're filling the trough while we're digging the other end of the trough. And this whole surround on 3 sides is going to get that drainage tube in it, but the drainage tube needs to go on a bed of gravel. So first we lay down a thin layer of gravel, then we put the drainage tube in, and the drainage tube gets plugged together. Now you see here the logistics of being able to drive the skid steer through the house and dump it over here was carefully planned as we laid out every idea. And then all the gravel gets flattened out and layered into the bottom of the hole. And you see that's the stick that Kurt just held, just so we know how deep we are. We had a certain goal, and so the bottom of that hole might not appear, but it is a level bottom. And now we have our bed for the drainage tube. And we start laying the drainage tube in and connecting it. Here you see the drainage tube. This tube has holes in it, so when the water collects down inside of this gravel pit, it goes into this tube and it makes its way back in and around to the lower corner, which you'll see in just a few minutes. So technically speaking, I don't need gutters on the house, which I hate gutters. They just get full of dirt and plants. And in fact, my own house right now, the one that I live in, has gutters. It looks like window boxes. I need to get up on the ladder and get rid of all the plants that are growing in there. And this is right on the fall line of the roof. Now we're back to Ken's project, putting the first capstone in place. Ken prepares the capstones by chipping the edge to give them a little less of a machine prepared edge. You'll see it in a few minutes what he does. But he'll lay it in place and then he flips it 180 until he gets the mortar in place. The mortar is going to keep it from slipping and sliding around. It basically glues it into position forever. And he will get it positioned and then flip it 180, get all the mortar in place, and then we flip it back. Now back to the drainage ditch. More and more gravel goes in there. More and more gravel. Lots and lots of gravel. Much more than we all anticipated, but all in, this process cost about $6,000. This process you see here. And, you know, building a house from scratch or building a house or repairing a house is expensive. And, you know, that $6,000 isn't all labor. It has a lot to do with the material, the rock. And now here you see how I'm able to put the leg in and get rid of the arch or the H-frame. And now we still have everything dug out except for right where we need to do last bits. And so we're right up to where we need to be for the bed that's going to carry the stone stack foundation, working our way around. And the last bit we'll do will be that little bridge that the mini hoe can drive across. But at this point, we have everything done. And this is the property across the street. You can see the graveyard in the distance, which is directly opposite the house. But there's 3 acres on one side, and we're at 9 acres here, dumping the gravel and the leftover dirt. This might be able to become a ramp down into the property, at least on this side of the graveyard. There is a ramp down into this. This whole part of the property is sunken down from the street level. There is a ramp on the other side, but we might be able to navigate a ramp with all that material. So that's why I said let's put it there in case we wanted to access the property from that side. And right here you hear Ken chipping away. I'll turn the volume up so you can hear it. But Ken is chipping away the edge of the stone that's going to become one of the capstones. And he gets rid of that machined edge by just tapping it over and over and over again with the hammer. And he cuts it with a circular saw with a dry blade. It's a bit messy, but he gets it partway through, then he just slaps it and breaks it off. That saw has seen better days. That's it. He does the Fonzie slap.
That was good.
More dirt. You could see the dirt and the logistics of the layout. And this is the dirt going out of the dump truck. It's a good thing that I had a place to dump it, because otherwise each one of these truckloads would have had to go to a property where they might need the fill, and it wouldn't happen in such a quick manner. And now we're finally getting rid of the bridge. That was our access to the other side. We don't need it anymore. Once it's full, then we can still drive through. But at this point, we're basically done with needing to go to that side of the house. You can see the trough is filling in nicely. We did not want to undermine the chimney. We know that this is a little bit of a less than perfect build once we dug into it and we started realizing how it was built by the previous owner, and even that restoration that I cut completely out of there. And the chimney is part of that 1990s restoration. I just hope that there's a substantial stack of stones underneath that chimney. We're going to break off the mantle there and rebuild all that underneath there in due time. Ken's going to put a nice foundation underneath what will become the hearth. And once we dig down there, we'll realize. But we were a little nervous digging too close to the chimney. We didn't want to undermine it in any way. But putting the gravel back in there supports all the open sides of the holes. And now you can see the Y right there. The white PVC creates the Y. There it is. And now Hunter's going to start digging the trough that goes down to the ground, which is about 20 inches lower than right where we are there. And you could see Hunter with the pole. I guess Kurt's in the excavator and Hunter's holding the pole. You see him holding it up, listening for the beep. And at the bottom of the stick is how deep that hole is going to go down, or how far it carries down. So he just keeps holding it up, listening for the beep on the tripod, which is somewhere near the house. And eventually that comes out of the ground. and we're going to have the open end of the pipe that's just going to stick out of the ground. We'll put a little puddle of gravel around it, put a big rock on it, and just try not to drive over it. And now Ken's ready to place that big capstone, and the other two capstones on either side of the basement entrance are also going to get flipped up and mortared. And you can see how much of the foundation he still needs to go. So you'll see by the end how much time is represented. And even though it seems like a slow process, he's moving along fairly quickly. Just preparing the hole for the drainage tubes that are going to get connected to that Y that go out to the field. And these are the tubes. They all get connected. I think at one point I might have brought over the wrong tube. I think the tube that goes in this trough doesn't have holes in it. So I think Kurt might look at it and reject it. Or maybe he doesn't. No, maybe that is the one that goes in there. That is the one that goes there. And I think a little bit further down, it's a solid tube with no holes in it. But what Kurt does is he connects it all together, then he picks it up out of the way. It's a thin tube, so he picks it up out of the way while gravel is dropped underneath it. And then we put gravel on top of it, and then we cover it up again with the dirt. And now we're picking up the capstone with the mortar underneath it. Ken slips and slides and taps it till it's the right level. I've seen Ken lay it down and not be happy with it, so we pick it back up and he scrapes out some of the mortar. And then we put it back. But you can see how the foundation wall isn't completely closed up and shut yet. He smooths out the mortar on top of that and lays that stone down on there. And all this drainage around it, the same type of drainage is around this part of the foundation, and it's all around the basement entrance. All that same type of drainage will prevent ice heave, at least in a big way. There certainly will be some natural happenstance that's just uncontrollable. With all the gravel around, it's a fighting chance that you're not going to get a tremendous amount of ice heave, which is the enemy of this type of foundation. Ice heave will pull everything apart over time, especially up here. I'm in zone 4 and everything gets super cold. At least for the moment. Maybe that's going to change in the few years to come. Now we're filling that hole, that drainage hole. Now back at the end of that hole, there's a pipe that's sticking out of the ground at a little low angle, and that pipe is the drain pipe. And we fill right up to where the connection takes place. It's amazing how Kurt and Hunter dig up and then close back up the earth. They did it all around my property. I have all types of drainage around the house. And it's amazing how it's a little jarring to see this big scar on the ground. You see that pipe there. We'll put some little stone accents around that just to let us know where it is. So all the rain from the house, or at least the extension, is going to fall into that drain, come down. And now we're just leveling it up. But those scars seem jarring at first, but in due time, nature takes over and they just go back to normal. You don't even notice that they're there. The grass will grow back in the spring. Throw some grass seed down and no one's going to know. Ken is very particular about the height of everything, so we went a little too high, so we're scraping it down and moving it around. And the ground gets tamped around, scraped, and just pushing down the ground. You could see the net result of the day. This is a tremendous amount of work. And now before the end of the day, Hunter grabs me all these 8x8s. These are all 17 feet long. I had them custom cut at the sawmill up the road, the Cooksburg sawmill, which is about 1 mile from the house. And this is it. Me and Mike have to get rid of the poles that are the one-legged poles and put back the H-frames, because now we're going to put the sill plate in place. The poles can't be in the same space. The single poles can't be in the same space as the H-frames. Now, I didn't learn this in school. This is me just doing some farmer technology. I know what has to happen, and I figure out the best way to do it. So there might be some engineers and architects out there punching their screen. I apologize for that, but this is me just thinking it through. How are we going to do this? You know, part of this was Mike's idea, part of this was my idea. Together we put our two halves of our brains together and we came up with this idea. So far so good. Nothing has collapsed, and now you see we got all of our single poles out. Our H-frames are back in place. We have plenty of space underneath it to start installing our 8 by 8 inch sill plate, 32 feet by 17 feet. Now pulling out the last pole. Again, every time we dial a screw jack in there, we're lifting the roof up. So the roof is up a little bit too high. Once the time is right, we're going to put the wall up underneath it, lower the roof onto the wall. It's going to be great. Now it's a few days later, and this is a big achievement. We're able to pull the I-beam out that was holding the house up so that we could put the foundation up underneath it. If you remember from the early episodes, there was no foundation under what was the heaviest part of the back of the house. This house is built on an existing foundation, but the house itself is built 2 feet wider in 3 directions. So the house was just on a little knee wall, and that knee wall was deteriorating. So this whole section of the house was drooping considerably. I raised it up probably about 8 or 9 inches at this point, and we put this I-beam in to hold it up in the air underneath my scarf joint there where I try to fix the foundation, at least the sill plate, the wooden sill plate. And we get the I-beam out of there. I'm in the basement calling the shots, getting it pushed through. Is that me? Did I come back out? No, I'm outside. And that's it. So we got our house is now on those 2 bottle jacks, and Ken is going to slowly start to fill in all of that, and you'll see by the end of the video it all starts to get filled in. And there we go. This might be a couple days later. You could see we got one of those bottle jacks out and the walls moved over. Now it's time for me to begin to start installing the sill plate. The way Ken wanted to work is he wanted me to put the sill plate in place, and he's going to build the wall up underneath it. Now, I'm really bad with this type of joinery. I take my best possible measurement, and then when I go to put it in place, nothing seems to fit. But we muscled our way through all this, cutting the pocket joints. This is going to be the one timber that is attached to the back of the original very first part of this whole entire structure, and you'll see in a minute. I needed to hang it off of the other 8 by 8 that was put in there 100 years ago or 200 years ago. It seems like it's made out of maple. There it is right there. Oh, maybe is that maple? I'm not sure. The ones I pulled out were maple. I don't know what the hell that is. Maybe it's oak. But that's the original sill plate from the original first house. And I made these steel brackets so that I could bring it over and hang it right on there. You can see that earlier repair in the beginning of that clip. And so I'm level. So I'm going to bring that 8 by 8 by 17 feet long over, and you can see how I do it alone. Ultimately, Mike begins to help me. He shows up, but this day I worked alone. So I cut this Schedule 40 drain pipe, and I used it to use as rollers across the ground. Where there's a will, there's a way. Just a little bit at a time. This took me all of about 15 minutes to get it in place. And now I have those metal hangers there. And now I'm going to be able to lift it up onto a milk crate and some other stuff I use just to kind of get the height that I need. There's a milk crate with a chunk of wood on it. And I pick it up and I'm able to slide it onto the steel brackets. And once I get onto the steel brackets, I'm pretty much in place. Now I'm on the steel bracket now, and now it's time to begin to screw it in place. So I have 12-inch timber locks, 12-inch timber locks, and you can see how it's pulling into that very healthy sill plate that's already there. Keeping my level as much as possible. I'm not going to lie, it's not easy to keep all these sides level. It's really more of an average. I'm just not that guy that could make things absolutely dead perfectly level. I'm going to create the illusion of perfectly level. And you know what they say, if it looks straight, it is straight. And here's my first mortise tenon that's going to go into the mortise on the wall. And we cut one as a mortise and one as a tenon. This one is obviously the tenon, and the other end is the mortise that's going to accept the other piece. So it's 6 pieces altogether, 2 on the long sides and 1 on each shorter side. 32 feet by 17 feet. And with a little bit of help from a few different types of wood cutting devices, we get what we need. And now me and Mike carry this over. It must have weighed 500 pounds. I know it looks easy because we're going fast, but it really was. I kept saying, let's go here. We made about 4 more stops before we got to here. Now we put it in place, and to be perfectly honest, off camera, it didn't fit. So we took some time off, some wood off, and we made it fit. And then we made it fit with the sledgehammer. So between me inserting it for the first time and that, it took quite a bit. And this is when we realized the sill plate on the house was a little twisted up, but it's too late to change it. I'm going to live with it. And now we are working on the other part that's going to plug into the end of that and cleaning it up. Same thing, we got it right to where it needs to be. Nothing seemed to fit perfectly. So we took some time while it was being held in place with a chisel and a hammer and got it to fit. So right there, we get it right to there. Boom, it doesn't fit. I take a few minutes, chisel it, bang it, chisel it, sand it, and then we try it again, and it starts to fit. There's Mike muscling it into place, and the gap is closing. And somewhere somebody made a big mistake, and we ended up with a gap in it, but we'll fill it in later with some wood. I'm using some 6-inch timber cons to get everything to stay close together. Now it's another day. Mike's using his steel chainsaw. And you could see you just use a circ saw to get rid of some of those fins. Working on that. A little bit of chiseling, a little bit of chainsawing, whatever it takes, by any means necessary. Now here we are putting on the very last cap, which is on the end of everything, and we use plumb bobs from the sill plates above to give us our corners and space. And that's what those strings are hanging around. Get it all whacked into place. I put some 6-inch timber locks in there to keep everything in place. And I'm not going to lie, the joinery wasn't great, but I wasn't about to start redoing it, so pulled out some thick sew, filled in all my crevices with thick sew as much as I possibly could. Took a few tubes of thick sew to get everything in place there. Thick sew is from Total Boat. You squeeze the tip, it comes out mixed, and then it turns into hard epoxy. So we'll keep the roaches and rats from getting in between those joints best we can. And really those joints are to keep it from when eventually there is some heave and some shifting, everything kind of stays together. That's the idea. If it was just lap jointed, one might pull up off the other. And now there we are. It is as level as I can get it, which is pretty close. The bubbles between the lines everywhere. Might be touching one line versus the other line in other spots, but I did the best we could. And a couple days goes by, and I ended up putting... Ken needed to get those two H-frames out of the way to be able to do the short wall. So in this next piece, you'll see I was able to, in one particular day, get in there and just put timbers in the ends, which act like the walls at the very end of the extension. And with those 4-inch I-beams on either side, we're able to cantilever the corner in space so that Ken and his team could get the stonework done up underneath it. And then once all the corners are supported, we'll be able to slide out that 4-inch I-beam. And now just a review of the basement steps. The basement steps are all pretty good. You could see here the foundation is well underway underneath the sill plate. The foundation under the house is closed up. And you could see from inside the wall meshes nicely with the existing wall that was there. And up inside here you could see where the original foundation wall that wasn't doing much except bending the interior floor is gone. Doesn't need to be there. And the foundation that is actually holding stuff up is further in. So that notch is just going to stay there.
Well, thanks for watching. That's the update. By the next episode, I'm going to try and close the walls in. I'll have all the floor joists in place. I'm going to start figuring out what I'm going to do with the fireplace. I'm going to get rid of that area there, put a proper foundation underneath there, do a nice stone hearth, go get some bluestone chunks or something, and Ken's going to do something real beautiful on this whole entire thing. This ceiling is going to be vaulted. A lot to do, a lot to come. And stick around for the barn update right now. You can see behind me there's been some progress on the horse barn. Some priorities changed, and so the horse barn was put on hold for about a year. And just recently I hired my buddy Mike, who did the interior of the black barn. He did that beautiful interior. Mike did this with his crew, and moving along, I'm going to get it to the next stage. I just wanted to give you guys a quick update. A lot of people ask me, am I going to keep it a horse barn? I think I will, just because I love the nostalgia of a horse barn. I might not have horses that I own. I might rent it out. There could be horses here, but they won't be mine. I will use it as a rental. That'll take a long time to get to that point. But in the meantime, the second floor is going to be my leather studio, because my leather business has been ramping up, and I need a place to spread out all the different leathers I have. I'm going to work on putting the second floor in. I bought all the floorboards. In fact, that's what that big pile is right there. That's the tongue and groove boards. Patrick is working on the electric, and things are moving along slowly. Patrick did the electrical service. That's going to be the primary electrical for the building. Going forward, I plan on building all the doors myself. I'm certainly going to build the big doors. These are going to be the big swing doors. I'm going to do all the strap hinges in the blacksmith shop, and this is going to be another source of content. There's only one me though, so it's going to take some time. These are the various horse stalls. This is the center aisle. There's a wash stall, a bathroom, a laundromat, and this would be the tack room. But all those different rooms are going to be used for potentially pottery and different disciplines, and maybe I'll rent out the different spots to other people as well. Second floor is beautiful. It's going to be my leather shop for the time being, but it will certainly keep progressing towards a full apartment. Right here you can see the flooring that I started. I don't know if I have the capacity or the time to finish it. Mike might finish it with his crew, but this is the flooring. You can see how beautiful it is. It's a 1/2 inch thick tongue and groove yellow pine, typically meant to be used on a roof. The birds are going crazy. This is all temporary planking just to give some space to work in here. But you can imagine how beautiful this is going to be as my leather studio. This is middle of the day, and there's plenty of light up here.
That's the update on the horse barn. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will be seeing you in episode 6. Hopefully I'll have the walls up at the other place. Like, share, and subscribe. I love you.